So picture this. A spinning top is literally cutting through a mountain.
Just slicing right through solid rock.
Right. And the sky above is glowing with this massive, intricate map of constellations.
Oh, and don't forget the literal god of destruction threatening to end the world right there on the spot.
Exactly. I mean, you'd think we're talking about ancient mythology or, I don't know, some massive high fantasy epic.
Lord of the Rings or something.
But we aren't. We are talking about early 2000s television that was designed specifically and unapologetically to sell plastic toys.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. And today, we are going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about it. Because if you're listening to this deep dive, you likely already know the basics, right?
Yeah, you know the names Ginka, Kyoya, Ryuga.
You probably even have a piece of metal and plastic sitting in a drawer somewhere that you used to launch in one of those little plastic stadiums.
I know, I definitely have a few in my attic.
Oh, same. But what you might not realize is the absolute narrative goldmine hidden beneath the surface of the Beyblade Metal series.
It's honestly a complete recontextualization. Like when we actually strip away the commercial mandates, the marketing, the surface level neon aesthetic.
Loud colors and shouting.
Right, exactly. When you strip all that away, what we are left with is a staggering piece of serialized story.
I mean, I spent hours last night just poring over the stack of source material we have for Dive. The raw battle data, the win percentages.
The timeline discrepancies are my favorite part.
Oh man, the timeline is a mess, but we'll get to that. But seriously, looking at the entire Metal series, so that's Fusion, Masters, Fury, and Shogun Steel, I was genuinely floored.
Because of the stakes. Right?
Yes. The stakes are almost incomprehensible. I mean, we're talking about spinning tops that parted the Red Sea. Moses literally used a Beyblade verse.
He did. That is canonically a thing that happened.
How did the writers take a piece of plastic on a ripcord and escalate it to apocalyptic state without the entire narrative just collapsing under its own?
Well, they did it by committing absolutely to the extreme fantasy style. And more importantly, by tethering those apocalyptic stakes to deeply human psychological trauma.
Okay, unpack that a little bit for me. Because when I think of Beyblade, I think of kids in a park, not psychological trauma.
Right, and that's because you might be thinking of later iterations, like Beyblade Burst. That show grounds itself in a very realistic sports anime vibe.
Yeah, it's very much about gymnasiums and local tournaments.
Exact. But the Metal series completely abandons that realism. The Beyblades are ancient relics used in historical war. By establishing that absurdly high power scale early on, the writers gave themselves a world-building foundation comparable to, Dragon Ball Z.
Or Naruto.
Yeah, exactly like Naruto. But here is the critical mechanism. If the external world is operating at an 11, stadiums exploding, oceans splitting the internal, emotional reactions of the characters have to be turned up to a 12 just for them to survive it.
Oh, that makes so much sense. The psychological break has to match the physical destruction.
It's not just a toy hitting another toy. It's two ideologies or two deeply damaged egos colliding.
Right. So think about a time you've been completely consumed by burnout or anxiety at work, that feeling of losing control over your own reactions. When you watch this series through that lens, you realize the extreme physical battles are just externalizations of those internal panic attacks.
Exactly. It makes it incredibly relatable once you strip away the fantasy.
And because this world is defined by these cataclysmic clashes, I want to jump straight into the actual data from our source. Someone went through and painstakingly tracked the win percentages of every major character across all.
And honestly, the methodology they used to compile that data is vital to understand here.
Yeah, it's not just a raw count of on-screen victories.
No, not at all. The data is calculated by dividing total wins by total battle, but it heavily factors in what they call implied.
Implied wins, like off-screen stuff.
Exactly. For instance, if a character like Deshan is introduced as the undisputed champion of the Wanghu Zong team in a massive international tournament, it is mathematically implied that he had to win dozens, if not hundreds, of regional qualifying rounds off-screen.
Just to achieve that position in the first.
Right. It gives us a highly accurate reflection of narrative dominance rather than just who had the most screen time.
It makes the entire series feel like an actual trackable sports league.
It really does.
And the tiers that emerge from this data are fascinating. Let's start at the bottom. We have the 0% Club.
The 0% Club, and it sounds so brutal.
It is brutal. Characters like Ryudo, Dan, and Reiki, but looking at their narrative function, these guys are really just victims of screen time, aren't they?
They absolutely are. A 0% win rate doesn't mean they are mechanically weak bladers within the lore.
Right, they show up, face the main characters to establish how strong Ginka or Kyoya are, and then they just disappear forever.
Precisely. Dan and Reiki, for example, use the evil Gemio's Beyblade, and mechanically, That top operates on a highly complex dual attack pattern.
So they aren't bad at...
No, their narrative utility is strictly to be a hurdle. They are the benchmark for the heroes to pass.
Okay, so moving up the ladder from the bottom, we hit the average tier. This is sitting around 45.
Very respectable.
Yeah. Benkai is at 47%. Tetsuya is at 50, though. Let's be real, his record is massive.
Oh, completely. He literally sabotaged stadiums and cheated in the early seasons.
Yeah, he's a total menace. But Kenta sits right at 45. And I want you to keep that number in mind, because that mid-tier status is the exact engine that drives higher character arc later on.
It's the core of his motivation.
Exactly. But then we jump up to the elite bracket, the 80% and above. And this is where it's crazy. Kyoya sits at an incredible 82%.
And Ginka is right there at 83%.
Deshawn is at 86%. But I want to pause on Ginka and Kyoya being separated by a single percentage.
It's mathematically beautiful, honestly.
It really is. In the world of statistical tracking, maintaining an 80+% win rate is already difficult.
But Ginka and Kyoya have dozens, if not hundreds, more battles tracked than the average character.
Because they're the main guys.
Right. To sustain that win rate with that sheer volume of battles, consistently finding the highest tier of international competition is just staggering.
It is the mathematical proof of their status as absolute, eternal equals.
They are perfectly.
But they aren't the kings of the mountain, and this is where the data completely blew my mind.
Oh, the top tier.
Yeah. The undisputed kings are Helios at 90%, Nile at 9%, and Ryuga at an absolutely terrifying 97%.
97% is just, it's absurd.
It's basically a guaranteed win every time he... Let's actually break down the official top 5 strongest bladers based on because it requires us to look at the physical mechanics of their top.
The engineering behind the toys really dictates the lore here.
Totally. So coming in at number 5 is Chris, wielding Phantom Orion. He won the Buster Island tournament against other legendary bladers. And the reason he's here is because his Beyblade has literal infinite stamina.
And we really need to explain why it has infinite stamina. It's not just anime magic.
Right, it's based on the real toy.
Exactly. It's brilliant mechanical design translated into lore. Phantom Orion features a bearing drive performance tip. Inside the actual toy and translated into the anime's physics are tiny, free-spinning ball bearings.
So it reduces friction.
It reduces friction on the stadium floor to essentially zero. While other characters are burning kinetic energy to launch special moves, Chris just sits there.
He's just chilling in the center of the stadium.
Pretty much. The laws of thermodynamics simply do not apply to him in the same way. That mechanical advantage makes him nearly unbeatable in a war of attrition.
Which brings us to number 4, King, wielding Verriers. King defeated Aguma and essentially bullied his way to the top tier, and his mechanical advantage is dual rotation.
Ah, the left and right spin.
Yes. He can spin left or right. In the physics of Beyblade, if a left spinning top hits a right spinning top, they don't clash. They actually equalize and steal each other's spin.
It's like gears locking together.
Exactly. King can manually choose his rotation to completely neutralize any spin stealing strategy. It forces his opponent into a pure, raw power struggle.
Which he almost always wins because he has 3 different special moves. He's incredibly overpowered.
He really... Moving to number 3, we find Reigo. Now we have to place a massive asterisk.
Huge asterisk. Because technically, as the human vessel for Nemesis, the god of destruction, he's the strongest entity in the entire series.
Yeah, he can manipulate the dark energy of literally every other Beyblade on the planet.
But in the context of this ranking, our source placed him at number 3, out of respect for the human competitors.
Yeah, it feels like a fundamental mismatch to rank a literal god against mortals who rely on skill and mechanics. So he gets the bronze medal just on principle.
Fair enough.
Which brings us to number 2. And this is a dead heat tie between Ginka and Kyoya.
The eternal rivals.
Ginka has the protagonist's narrative armor, obviously, plus massive world-saving feats like defeating the Spiral Force, but Kyoya completely, undeniably caught up to him.
Their World Championship battle is proof of that. It's one of the most brutal clashes in the series.
It ends in a double knockout tie. They pushed each other to the absolute limit of human endurance.
And then, undisputed at number 1, we have Ryuga, the Dragon Emperor.
A 97% only recorded loss are to Ginka in Season 1, heavily compromised by dark power possession, and to Rago, who, again, is a god.
Ryuga is just the anomaly of the entire franchise. He operates entirely outside the established rules of the sport.
Right, he doesn't train in gyms with the WBBA.
No. He trains inside active volcanoes. He dominates across all 3 seasons with a near-perfect record because his Medio Drago literally feeds on the rotational energy of his opponents.
Spin stealing taken to the extreme.
Exactly. The harder you hit him, the stronger he gets.
Okay, but I spent an hour staring at this data trying to make sense of the top tier because Ryuga is at 97%, which checks out. But right beneath him at 90% is Helios.
Ah, Helios.
Yeah, and I had to pause because based on the timeline, Helios literally shouldn't exist in the canon. His movie, Soul Blaze, contradicts the entire chronological placement of the main series.
It completely breaks the timeline.
So how is a guy who doesn't even fit into the timeline sitting at number 2 in the win rates?
Well, Helios is the ultimate canonical friction point. In the Soul Blaze movie, his introduction is arguably the most visually dominant in the entire franchise.
It's insane. He leaves a massive smoldering crater in the stadium.
He defeats multiple top-tier characters simultaneously without breaking a sweat, and then he just absolutely dismantles Ginka.
And what about that Ryuga connection?
Right. To your point about Ryuga being unbeatable in the official manga tie-in for the movie, Helios actually battles Ryuga.
Wait, really? I missed that in the source.
Yeah, it's a clash of their ultimate world-ending move, Dragon Emperor's Supreme Flight versus Blazing Execution, and it ends in a dead tie.
A tie.
Yes, Helios is the only non-deity character known to survive Ryuga's ultimate attack.
But the timeline, if we look at the mechanics of the show, where does this move fit? It can't happen during Metal Fusion because Ginka has Galaxy Pegasus and Masamune is on the...
Correct.
And it can't happen during Metal Fury because Ginka has Cosmic Pegasus. The only logical window is the few weeks between the end of Metal Masters and the start of Metal...
And even that window is slammed shut by the continuity of the show itself.
Right, because at the start of Metal Fury, Madoka is desperately trying to repair Pegasus from the catastrophic damage it sustained in the Metal Master.
Beyblade was completely out of commission. It was in pieces.
So, mechanically and logically, Ginka could not have fought Helios during that time. The movie cannot be canon.
But it is canon.
I know, because if you look closely at the final episode of the Legacy sequel series, Shogun Steel, Helios literally appears in a cameo.
He's just standing there in the flesh alongside Team Lavushka.
It's like finding a historical artifact that carbon dates to a century that didn't. He is mathematically the second strongest blader in the world, and his existence breaks the space-time continuum.
What Helios represents is the massive, unavoidable collision between narrative integrity and commercial demand.
The executives wanted to sell...
Exactly. They wanted a high-budget theatrical movie to sell the Soul Blaze toy, and they frankly didn't care if it broke the timeline to do it.
And that commercial mandate is actually the root cause of what our sources consider the greatest tragedy of the metal, the discarded character.
The side character problem.
Yeah, the commercial imperative of this show was actively suffocating. It's like, imagine a brilliant architect trying to build a beautiful Gothic, but halfway through the construction, the investor demands they integrate a brightly colored fast food drive-thru right into the main hall.
The structural integrity just collapses.
Exactly. They had to introduce a new toy every few episodes, which meant they had to introduce a new character, use them once, throw them away.
You see it with characters like Kumasaki. He was quite literally sketched out simply because the manufacturer needed to showcase the defensive capability of the Rock Orso Beyblade for the Q3 product catalog.
It's so corporate.
It really is. But it becomes genuinely tragic when the writers accidentally design a masterpiece of a character, give them a deep backstory, and then have to abandon them.
Teru is the perfect example of this. When I was reading about Teru's backstory, I was stunned.
It's surprisingly dark.
It is. This isn't a kid who just likes spinning pops. Teru was a world-famous ballet. His entire identity, his entire physical reality was tied to his grace and his art.
And then he suffers a horrific career-ending injury.
He loses everything. At his absolute rock bottom, wallowing in despair, he is approached by a mysterious girl who hands him the Earth Virgo, and here is the kick.
The girl looks exactly like Virgo's mythological avatar.
Exactly. Which implies a profound, almost supernatural intervention. It sets up this beautiful narrative about grief, physical rehabilitation, and finding a second chance at life through a new medium.
He even channels his lost ballet techniques into his launch style. It's incredibly poetic.
But because he was only needed to fulfill a 22-minute advertising quota for the Virgo toy, that entire psychological thread is severed immediately.
We never learn who the girl was.
Nope. We never see Teru rebuild his life. He is just a ghost narrative.
And if Teru was a tragedy of theme, Sora was a tragedy of pure narrative potential.
Oh, Sora, the Cyber Pegasus guy.
Right. Sora had raw, unrefined mechanical talent that we honestly hadn't seen since Ginka's debut in Episode 1. He was a complete amateur, yet his raw output was so astronomically high that he managed to conceptualize and execute a devastating special move in a single afternoon.
To put that in perspective for you listening, seasoned professionals in this universe train in the mountains for months to unlock a special, and Sora did it between lunch and dinner.
He possessed all the hallmarks of a legacy protagonist. He was a Ginka superfan who needed to learn discipline to temper his raw power.
He was perfectly positioned to be the lead character of the Shogun Steel sequel series.
A true passing of the torch narrative from Ginka to Sora would have felt incredibly earned.
But why did he exist? Simply to advertise a Nintendo DS video game that came bundled with the Cyber Pegasus.
He gets 2 borderline filler episodes to show off the digital code, and then he's completely discarded.
And this cascading problem, this rushing of characters to meet toy quotas, it reaches its absolute breaking point in the final season, Metal Fury.
Let's analyze the structural failure of Metal Fury, because it really is a structural issue. The first 2 seasons, Fusion and Masters, were given 51 episodes each.
Which is a massive amount of narrative real estate to let characters breathe.
Exactly. You can establish rivalries, build tension, let the plot unfold naturally. Now, Metal Fury is the climax of the entire saga. It deals with the awakening of a dark god and the literal end of the world.
The highest stakes possible.
And yet, inexplicably, it was condensed into just 39 episodes.
They lost 12 entire episodes. Nearly 3 months of storytelling just vanished from the production.
But the toy manufacturer didn't care. They still demanded the writers introduce the new line of legendary bladers.
So they had to forcibly cram Yuki, Dynamis, Aguma, Tiffy, Chris, and King into a rapidly shrinking window.
The casualties of this compression are just obvious when you watch it.
Yeah.
Look at Tiffy. His entire character arc, his introduction, his psychological growth, his integration into the team dynamic, it is fast-forwarded and resolved in exactly 2 episodes.
2 episodes. And Dynamis, who has this incredibly rich, mystical character design as the guardian of a temple, he's just reduced to a walking exposition dump.
He only exists to quickly explain the plot mechanics to the audience because there was no time to show them organically.
And even the main villain, Rago, he has 0 psychological depth. He's just a guy standing on a rock holding the dark god toy, waiting for the heroes to hit him.
It's a huge letdown.
But the rush didn't just ruin the new characters. It resulted in devastating snubs for characters we had spent years loving. The characters who absolutely, mechanically, and narrative deserve to be legendary.
The Masamune snub is perhaps the most egregious narrative betrayal in the series.
Oh, makes me so mad.
The season establishes a very clear prophet. They are searching for the 4 legendary bladers of the 4 spring, summer, autumn, and winter. They find 3. The only one missing is the winter constellation.
And now, look at Masamune. His Beyblade is Blitzstriker, which is based on Manas.
A literal winter constellation.
Right. Ginka even tells him he's the one. Masamune's entire character arc that season is built around believing he's destined for great.
He enters the Buster Island tournament, pushes himself beyond his physical limits to awaken his star fragment. The audience is primed for this massive emotional payoff.
And then Chris, a brand new character we met literally 5 minutes ago, just swoops in, claims the winter spot, and crushes Masamune's dreams.
It's meant to be a subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
But because of the 39-episode crunch, it just feels cruel. It feels unearned.
And Niall was equally robbed. We established earlier that Niall has a 90% win rate. Let's talk about the mechanics of why he...
In Metal Master, Niall faces Julian Concern. Julian uses Black Excalibur, a move that generates a literal localized earth. It is raw, overwhelming kinetic force.
And Niall counters with Mystic Zone, which isn't an attack, but a dimensional distortion that absorbs and completely dissipates Julian's kinetic energy.
Niall single-handedly dismantled the champion of Europe. He was mechanically worthy of a star fragment.
Completely worth. But I want to talk about Damien, because Damien's snub is a missed opportunity for a masterpiece redemption.
Let's get into Hades Inc. then.
Yeah, we need to look at Hades Inc.'s arrangements. This wasn't just a tough training camp for kids. This was a brutal, pseudoscientific torture process.
They mapped a child's brain waves and forcibly synchronized their nervous system to a Beyblade's resonance.
They were artificially generating power by traumatizing the blader. And Damien was their ultimate victim. He was a kid who had this fake, artificial superiority complex forced into his brain.
When Damien inevitably loses and his artificial power shatters, the show just lets him fade into obscurity.
Which is such a waste. Imagine if he was given one of the missing star fragments. Imagine a storyline where he has to painfully detox from the arrangement system, abandon the fake power, and learn to bond authentically Beyblade Hades Kerbex.
He could have earned real organic strength alongside the heroes.
It's a built-in redemption arc that was completely left on the table. So it raises the ultimate question, right? If we could go back in time and hand the writers those missing 12 episodes, how do you actually fix Metal Fury?
Well, you use that time to let the mechanics and the psychology breathe. You restructure the pacing.
So how would you rewrite it?
For example, Instead of rushing the discovery of Aguma, you dedicate 3 episodes to a Balin Temple and Balin Fist reunification tournament.
Okay, I like that.
You have Aguma and Dashan clash in a heavily detailed tactical battle where they realize their differing martial arts philosophies, raw, aggressive force versus disciplined defensive flow, actually complement each other like yin and yang.
Oh, that's so much better than what we got. And you could take 2 episodes and just follow Dynamis and Tippy deep into uncontacted regions of Africa.
Show them exploring.
Yeah, building a genuine mentor-student bond. Instead of just throwing Tithi into a war zone with no preparation, you could have Team Dungeon Masamune Toby and Zio doing a cleanup operation.
Hunting down the remnants of Hades, Inc.
Right, across the globe, giving actual closure to Damien's storylines talked about.
And structurally, you need to validate Kyoya's power scaling before the finale. The ideal fix would be a 4-episode solo gauntlet arc for Kyoya.
Oh, a solo arc.
No Ginka, no side characters, just Kyoya traveling the globe, hunting down and systematically battling every single new legendary blader, just to prove to himself that he is still the apex predator before he inevitably faces Ginka.
That alone would have been peak television. Just a pure, unadulterated boss rush. But despite all this criticism about the rush finale, we have to be fair. Because when the writers did have the time, when they weren't crushed by toy quotas, they crafted absolute masterclass character. And we need to talk about Tsubasa.
Because honestly, rewatching this arc as an adult, it is terrifying.
It's so dark.
Tsubasa's arc with the Dark Power is a profound, incredibly accurate depiction of a mental health crisis. We need to explain the mechanics of this dark power.
It's not just a generic evil spell.
Right. When Tsubasa battles Ryuga, his Beyblade is infected by a parasitic resonance. It acts like a virus of the mind.
Right.
It feeds on Tsubasa's insecurities and his fear of inadequacy.
And Tsubasa is established as the calm, calculated, hyper-intelligent spy of the group. He is always in. Watching him lose that control is visceral.
You literally see him suffering from what are essentially severe panics.
His voice breaks. He begs for the voices in his head to stop. He pushes his friends away and runs into the wilderness because he genuinely believes he's a physical danger he loves.
It is an incredibly heavy, dark allegory for severe anxiety in a show aimed at children.
And the resolution of that arc is brilliant because it doesn't resort to a magical cure. In his breaking point battle against the Cetus twins and Argo, Tsubasa is pushed to the absolute brink of psychological collapse.
And instead of fighting the darkness, instead of trying to repress his anxiety and fear, he accepts it.
Yeah, he realizes that his darker, aggressive half is still a part. He integrates that shadow self, masters it, and uses it. It is a deeply psychological resonance.
Right next to that, we have Kenta's journey in Season 3. Remember that 45% win rate we talked about earlier?
I do, the mediocre coin flip.
Exactly. Kenta starts the series as the lovable but genuinely useless sidekick. He's always cheering from the sidelines, but when the world is ending, he feels the crushing weight of his inadequacy.
So what does he do? He leaves the safety of the group and he stalks.
Which is just insane.
It's so crazy. He tracks a guy with a 97% win rate, a guy who trains in volcanoes through deserts and mountains.
It is the ultimate test of endurance. Kenta doesn't try to beat Ryuga in a battle because he knows he can't.
He'd be
Right. He earns the Dragon Emperor's respect by surviving the sheer environmental hazard of just being near him. He shows an unbreakable, irrational resolve.
And the payoff is exquisite. When Ryuga falls, he chooses Kenta, the kid who annoyed him to inherit his star frag. It is a flawless execution of the zero to hero trope.
And we can't ignore the psychological depth they gave to the villains either. Look at Zio in Season 2.
Oh man, Zio is heart.
He provides a horrifying look at what a person will do out of pure desperation. His best friend, Toby, is dying of a terminal illness. Zio has no money.
So he sacrifices his own morals, sells his soul to Hades Inc., and willingly subjects himself to the arrangements.
We literally see him enduring agonizing physical and neurological torture, becoming a lab rat entirely because it pays for Toby's medical bills. It's devastating.
Or Julian Concern in Season 2. Julian is introduced as the flawless, rich, undefeated aristocratic heir. His entire reality is built on the concept of his own perfection.
When Ginka defeats him, it shatters his entire world.
He hits rock bottom, loses his family fortune, and in a state of absolute despair, he sells out his own country and joins the villains who ruined him.
He completely strips away his own dignity.
And his redemption comes from Dashan. Dashan absolutely brutalizes Julian in a battle, breaking down the last remnants of his fake ego, and delivers that incredible line, "A broken sword can always be fixed."
It's a masterclass in breaking a character down to their studs to rebuild them.
These arcs prove that the writers understood complex human psychology, but Analyzing these character arcs brings us back to a massive, ongoing debate within the fandom regarding Masamune.
The mass debate.
Yes, many viewers label Masamune a fraud because he constantly screams that he is number one, yet he has a very visible, very frustrating track record of high-stakes matches.
He does lose a lot when it counts.
He does, but I actually want to mount a defense for Masamune here because I was looking deeply at the mechanics of his losses in our sources, and calling him a fraud is incredibly Let's break down these so-called fraudulent.
Okay, let's hear it.
First, he loses to K-Oxen. Why? Because the literal Great Wall of China collapses under his feet during the match.
That is true.
He loses his footing because a historical monument crumbles. That is not a lack of mechanical skill. That is an act of God.
And consider his loss to Klaus in the European tournament. Masamune actually executes a flawless tactical battle. He pushes Klaus so hard that Klaus literally surpasses the biological limits of the human body to generate enough power to win.
Klaus's muscles tear, and he passes out into a coma immediately after the battle.
Masamune essentially fought a superhuman anomaly.
Yep.
That is tragic narrative armor working against Masamune, not fraudulence.
Exactly. However, I will concede that the data points to one undeniably fraudulent moment, and that's the battle against Nile.
Oh, the press conference.
Yeah, Masamune calls a massive press conference. He talks unbelievable amounts of trash. He goes on live television and says his battle with Nile will make Ginka and Kyoya look like a children's game of marbles.
And then during the match, when Nile catches him in the Mystic Zone, and Masamune realizes he's structurally outmatched, he gives up.
He drops to his hands and knees and starts punching the stadium floor in frustration while his Beyblade is still spinning. That is fraudulent behavior.
It's not a good.
But the overall verdict from our sources, Masamune isn't a fraud. He's an elite, top-tier competitor who just happens to be the unluckiest guy on the...
He is unlucky, and his arrogance often blindfolds his tactical awareness. But even the fan favorites, the characters who supposedly had perfect development, were not immune to bizarre, frustrating writing choices.
Like who?
Well, this becomes glaringly obvious when we examine the regressions of Kyoya and Ryuga in Season 3.
Oh, right. The Kyoya regression is so frustrating it almost ruins the character for me.
In Seasons 1 and 2, we watch Kyoya undergo this beautiful, hard-earned growth. He starts as a ruthless street gang leader who literally steals points from weaker kids.
But through his rivalry with Ginka, he learns discipline. During the Spiral Core Crisis 2, he puts his massive ego aside. He willingly teams up with Ginka to save the world, showing genuine maturity and tact.
But in Season 3, all of that hard-earned maturity vanishes overnight. The writers needed to create artificial conflict to separate him from the group, so they regress him into this incredibly agitated, miserable, lone wolf caricature.
He is constantly complaining about being around people. And the breaking point, what the community calls his crash out, happens when Aguma makes a very simple, very accurate
Aguma simply points out that for a guy who claims to be a lone wolf, Kyoya sure spends a lot of time traveling with Ginka and his friend.
Which is a completely valid observation. He's literally on a plane with them every episode.
It is entirely valid. But Kyoya's reaction is to completely lose his psychological grip. He violently attacks Ginka, he attacks Dynamis, he attacks everyone around him, screaming about his independence before storming off into the wilderness.
It entirely contradicts the calculating, mature character who, just one season prior, calmly coordinated a global defense strategy. It is forced conflict at the expense of character integrity.
And if Kyoya's regression was a failure of character, Ryuga's flaw in Season 3 is a catastrophic failure that nearly dooms the planet.
Yeah, Ryuga really dropped the ball.
Ryuga's arc up to this point is flawed. He goes from the possessed, unhinged villain of Season 1 to this wise, wandering anti-hero in Season 2 who absolutely despises fake manufactured power.
He is the ultimate neutral arbiter of strength.
But in Season 3, Nemesis arrives. The literal god of destruction is awakening to wipe out the planet. All the legendary bladers realize they need to combine their star fragments to create Zeus's barrier, a massive sealing spell. They beg Ryuga to join the circle.
And Ryuga, consumed by hubris, refused. He looks at the god of destruction and arrogantly decides that not only can he defeat it by himself, but he can use Meteola Drago's spin-stealing mechanics to absorb its dark power.
It's sheer insanity.
It's like watching a superhero spend 2 movies learning the vital, painful importance of teamwork, only to walk into the final Avengers movie, look at the assembled heroes and say, nah, you guys sit this out. I got Thanos in a one-on-one.
And mechanically, it fails instantly. Nemesis's mass is too great. Ryuga cannot absorb the energy, and he gets utterly crushed.
But this arrogance made me think, what if he had joined? If we rewrite that one moment of hubris, it alters the entire timeline.
The alternate history of a cooperative Ryuga changes the entire global ecosystem of the sport. Let's map out the causality here.
Okay.
If Kenta's resolve manages to convince Ryuga to swallow his pride just a few days earlier, Ryuga takes his place among the legendary bladers of the four seasons. They launch their Beyblades in unison.
Because all 4 seasonal fragments are present.
Right, so Zeus's barrier operates at 100% mechanical efficiency. Nemesis is sealed immediately before it can even fully manifest.
The world is saved in, like, episode 20.
Exactly. But the cascading butterfly effect of that one moment of humility is wild. Because Ryuga doesn't try to solo Nemesis. He isn't killed.
Which means he doesn't pass his star fragment power to Kenta.
Which means Kenta never triggers the physical evolution of his Beyblade into Flash Sagittario. Kenta stays a mid-tier blader forever.
Oh man, poor Kenta. He gets robbed in this timeline.
But most importantly, because Nemesis is sealed quickly and quietly, the global population doesn't witness a massive dark god almost destroying the Earth.
Which means the sport of Beyblade does not suffer a catastrophic public relations disaster. The WBBA doesn't have to shut down international tournaments.
The 7-year dead period between the end of Metal Fury and the start of Shogun Steel simply never happened. The sport continues to thrive, unimpeded.
All of that geopolitical fallout stems entirely from Ryuga's tragic flaw of arrogance. I love mapping out these alternate timelines.
They're really fun to explore.
And actually, while I was diving into the research, I found this incredible section where fans have restructured the entire World Championship tournament from Season 2 based on deep hypotheticals.
Oh, the tournament brackets?
Yeah. Let's play a couple of these out because it really highlights how fragile the power is. Let's look at the great what-if scenario. What if Masamune stayed in America?
This is a highly plausible scenario. If Masamune chooses to stay in America to emotionally and physically support his sick friend Toby, he likely ends up joining the American team Starbreak just to stay close to the medical.
Makes total sense for his character.
This leaves Team Japan, Gang Galaxy, severely depleted. They have to substitute in a weaker blader from their reserve roster, likely Kenta or Yu taking a permanent starting spot.
Okay, so follow the bracket. Gang Galaxy, without their heavy hitter mask, faces the African team, Wildfang, in the A block semifinal. Ryuga and Kyoya have their massive, earth-shattering battle, and it ends in a tie, just like in canon.
But now, the deciding match falls to the substitute. An exhausted, much younger Yu has to step up and face Nile.
And we know Nile has a 92% win rate, and the Mystic Zone.
Right. Mechanically, Yu relies on Flame Libra, which uses sonic vibration to destabilize the stadium sand. But Nile's Mystic Zone nullifies kinetic and vibrational.
Nile's systematically dismantled.
Exactly. Team Japan, the main characters of this show, are eliminated in semifinals.
Yeah.
And Wildfang advances to face Masamune and Starbreaker in the World Finals.
That completely rewrites the entire...
Okay.
Now let's run an even darker timeline. What if the Dark Nebula, the terrifying villains from Season 1, entered the World Champ?
A team consisting of Season 1, Ryuga, Reggie, Yu, and Ryutaro. This is a fascinating mechanical matchup. If the Dark Nebula enters, the bracket simulator predicts they draw the Chinese team, Wanghu Zong, in round 1.
Okay, so we start with Reggie. Reggie uses Poison Serpent.
And Reggie's entire strategy relies on psychological warfare. He physically manifests his opponent's fear. He battles Deshawn, and using these terror tactics, he manages to psychologically break the disciplined martial artist, securing a win for Dark Nebula.
But then Yu, who is still loyal to Dark Nebula at this point and much less experienced, faces Chiyun. Chiyun uses Thermal Lacerda, which is highly...
Chiyun outmaneuvers Yu and wins. It's tied 1-1.
The entire World Championship run comes down to the final match. Season 1 Ryuga versus Season 2 Deshawn.
And here is where the mechanics of the timeline become crucial. Season 1 Ryuga is relying entirely on the unrefined, parasitic base dark power of Lightning Eldra. He has not yet undergone his volcanic isolation training to master his own strength.
Right. But Season 2 Deshawn, however, has trained intensely for the World Champs, perfecting his solid iron wall defensive martial arts.
Deshawn's discipline clashes directly with Ryuga's chaotic, unrefined power.
And because Ryuga hasn't mastered his Beyblade yet, Deshawn's sheer, grounded physical defense is enough to withstand the dark power.
In the most massive, shocking upset in Beyblade history, Deshawn defeats the Dragon Emperor.
The Dark Nebula is eliminated in the very first round of the tournament.
It perfectly illustrates how dramatically the power scaling and mechanical refinement shifted between Season 1 and Season 2. Raw power was no longer enough. Tactical mastery became the deciding factor.
But exploring these hypotheticals also brings a glaring issue.
Yeah.
The massive gaping holes in the show's lore, the unsolved mysteries that the writers simply left hanging.
There are quite a few of them.
And the biggest mystery for me has always been, we just talked about him in the hypothetical, but in the actual canon, Reggie is one of the most terrifying, sadistic antagonists. He literally on.
But after Ginka finally pushes past his terror and completely shatters Reggie's Beyblade, Reggie has a mental breakdown and just vanishes.
He is never seen or mentioned again. But our sources highlighted a fan theory that not only explains his disappearance, but perfectly patches a massive lore in
the Reggie Medusa theory. It is arguably the most structurally sound piece of fan fiction in the.
Break it down.
The theory proposes that after suffering that humiliating ego-shattering defeat to Ginka, a disgraced Reggie flees Japan. He travels to Europe and begins terrorizing the underground street bladers across various European cities.
He is brutalized, trying to feed on their fear to rebuild his shattered psyche.
But his Beyblade, Poison Serpent, isn't just a snake motif. The theory suggests it carries the residual mythological curse of Medusa.
And this is where it gets crazy. As Reggie feeds on the feel of these European bladers, the Medusa curse fully activates and possesses.
He physically transforms into a monstrous entity, much like Ryuga did when he was possessed by the dark power in Season 1.
The European WBBA authorities are completely powerless to stop this monster tearing, so they call in their
Julian concern.
Julian tracks down this fully possessed, monstrous Reggie to an abandoned underground stadium. They engage in a catastrophic battle.
Julian, utilizing his flawless tactile precision, manages to defeat Reggie, effectively breaking the Medusa curse and freeing him.
But in the climax of that battle, Julian's Beyblade, Gravity Destroyer, absorbs the residual cursed energy of Medusa from the shattered serpent.
Which perfectly mechanically explains how Julian randomly possesses the Eyes of Medusa's special ability in Season 2.
Right, out of nowhere, Julian has a move that literally turns his opponent's Beyblades to stone, weighing them down with immense.
The anime never explains how a rich kid from Italy got the power of Medusa.
This theory bridges the gap between the seasons, gives Reggie a definitive ending, and explains the physics of Julian's powers. That is top-tier, masterful lore crafting by the.
It really demonstrates how deeply the audience understands the mechanics of the universe. But speaking of mechanics, we have to address the most hotly contested debate in the entire fandom.
Oh boy.
The Faust versus Ryuga debate. Who is actually mechanically stronger?
Okay, set the stage. Faust is essentially a brainwashed taupe operating the spiral core. His ultimate move, Spiral Dimension, is an anomaly in the power.
It really is.
It creates a literal, localized black hole inside the stadium. Opponents caught in it are completely frozen in the fabric of space and time. They are helplessly floating, unable to move, unable to use special moves, just waiting to be crushed.
In the show, Ryuga breaks this black hole, but he does it by striking the physical machinery powering the facility from the outside.
Right, from the outside.
That is the critical distinction. No one in the history of the show has ever escaped the spiral dimension once they are trapped inside its gravitational pull. Ginka and Masamune were completely paralyzed by it.
So what's the argument?
If we simulate a one-on-one battle between Faust and Ryuga in a neutral, isolated stadium with no external generators to target, logic dictates that if Faust activates Spiral Dimension, Ryuga will be caught.
And if he is caught in a localized distortion of space-time, he cannot physically launch an attack. The physics of the move negate his raw power, so Faust wins.
See, I have to push back on the physics here, because while you are arguing mechanics, I am arguing Blader spirit.
Okay, lay it on me.
I am championing Ryuga's sheer, terrifying, irrational willpower. We are talking about a guy who overcame demonic possession through pure, unadulterated anger.
That is true. He was literally possessed by a demon and just got mad enough to beat it.
Exactly. The spiral dimension is a localized spatial distortion, yes, but we have seen tops in this show part oceans and shattered dimensions before. If anyone has the sheer narrative force to rip a hole in a black hole from the inside out, it is the Dragon Emperor.
He wouldn't use physics.
No, he would just get so angry that the black hole shatters. I genuinely think Ryuga breaks it and destroys Faust.
And that exact friction, the clash between the rigid physical mechanics of the tops and the raw narrative willpower of the characters, is precisely why the debate has raged for over a decade.
It's what makes the show so compelling.
But let's move from theoretical arena battles to the massive canonical gaps in the timeline. We touched on it earlier, but what actually happened during the infamous 7-year gap between the end of Metal Fury and the beginning of Shogun?
We know the sport of Beyblade completely died out.
And to be fair, I completely understand why. If I'm a parent and I watch a group of teenagers use spinning tops to summon a dark god that almost plunges the earth into eternal darkness, I'm throwing those toys in the incinerator.
Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable parenting.
But what was the WBBA doing during those 7 years?
Based on the lore fragments we get in Shogun Steel, the WBBA spent those 7 years desperately trying to rehabilitate the sport's public image.
Because it was basically seen as a weapon of mass destruction.
Right. So they introduced heavily regulated scaled-down tournaments. They implemented the zero-G stadiums that constantly swayed, forcing bladers to focus on balance and physics rather than raw, world-ending power.
They hosted a heavily sanitized Second World Championship, but notably Team Excalibur was missing from the roster.
Julian Concern was likely too traumatized by the escalating, apocalyptic nature of the sport to ever compete professionally again.
Which makes total psychological sense. He had his ego shattered, got involved with terrorists, and watched the world almost end. He's done. But the biggest mystery from that 7-year gap revolves around the protagonist.
Ginka's new Beyblade.
Yeah. How does Ginka get Samurai Pegasus? When he finally appears in Shogun Steel, he is wielding this brand new, evolved Beyblade, and the anime offers zero explanation for it. Where did it come from?
There are two prevailing theories in our sources. The cynical commercial theory suggests that the WBBA, desperate for a marketing win, simply manufactured Samurai Pegasus in a high-tech lab and handed it to Ginka.
They essentially sponsored him with a new corporate-approved toy to serve as the smiling face of their newly regulated sport.
I hate it.
Me too. It completely strips away Ginka's. I much prefer the natural evolution.
The natural evolution theory is far more compelling. It suggests that after the trauma of the Nemesis crisis and the loss of his rival, Ryuga, Ginka fundamentally changes his approach to blading.
He abandons the spotlight.
Right. For 7 years, he adopts Ryuga's grueling, isolated training method. He travels to harsh environments, training in solitude.
Through nearly a decade of relentless mastery, he manages to unlock 100% of Cosmic Pegasus's latent potential, a level of absolute synchronization that no human had ever.
This intense spiritual bond triggers a natural, unprecedented physical evolution, forging Samurai Pegasus purely from his blader spirit.
I love that so much. It means Ginka honors Ryuga's sacrifice by walking the path of his greatest rival.
But bringing up Ryuga leads us directly into the biggest, most hotly contested mystery of the entire franchise.
Oh, this is the big one.
Did Ryuga actually survive the finale of Metal Fury?
Because when he gives Kenta his star fragment, his physical body literally disintegrates into glowing golden dust and vanishes into the... It is framed as a definitive, deeply tragic death.
It is framed that way, yes.
Yeah.
However, the legacy sequel, Shogun Steel, throws a massive intentional wrench into that.
In that series, a new character named Sakio wields a reverse rotation dragon Beyblade, heavily reminiscent of El Drago.
And during a crucial scene, Sakio explicitly states to the protagonist, Zero, that he received his Beyblade directly from a legendary blader.
As he delivers this line, a clear, unmistakable silhouette of Ryuga appears on screen.
And this is where the logic just breaks down completely, because you cannot receive a physical Beyblade from a pile of dust. So how is he handing out tops to kids years later?
The community dug deep into the manga lore to solve this, and the theory they produced is wild. Ryuga isn't just a tough guy who found a strong top.
He is a direct descendant of the ancient dragon, a mystical lineage that has protected the reverse rotation tops for centuries.
The theory proposes that because of this bloodline, Ryuga is functionally immortal.
It posits that when he expended all his life force fighting Nemesis, he didn't die. His body simply broke down to enter a state of regenerative hibernation.
He vanished to rebuild his physical form, spent the next few years wandering the globe in total secrecy, eventually found Sakio a child worthy of the Dragon Clan's legacy, passed on the newly forged Beyblade, and then vanished back.
It transforms his sacrifice from a permanent death into a mythological cycle of rebirth.
It perfectly fits the dragon mode. But while Ryuga's fate is hidden in the shadows of mythology, the fate of our two main characters...
And this brings us to the ultimate, final battle of the original series, the moment that the entire 150-plus episode saga builds toward.
The Fade to Black.
The Fade to Black.
Exact. After they save the world from Nemesis, Ginka and Kyoya return to the stadium. Just the two. No world-ending stakes. No dark god. Just the purest rival.
They lock eyes, they pull their ripcords, they launch their Beyblades, they clash in the center of the stadium, and the screen instantly cuts to black.
The series ends. For over a decade, fans thought it was a frustrating, unsolvable mystery left ambiguous by writers who didn't want to alienate either fan.
But looking at the data, the lore, and character psychology, we have actually cracked who won that final battle.
To solve it, we have to look at the immediate context of the launch and the vital evidence provided by the 7-year time skip in Shogun. Let's establish the powers of that exact.
Right, because Kyoya didn't just walk up and ask for a friendly match. In the days leading up to this finale, Kyoya ran a brutal, solo gauntlet.
He traveled around the world and systematically hunted down.
He beat King, Crest, Kenta, proved mechanically and undeniably that he was the absolute, undisputed #2 blader.
He eliminated all other variants. When he steps into that stadium against Ginka, they are terrifying.
Now we look at the clue from the future. In Shogun Steel, we get cameos or updates on almost every major character from the original series.
We see that Masamune runs a successful training gym. Dashan is still leading the Bailin Temple. Bengtai runs a burger restaurant, but still coach. They are all still deeply involved in the ecosystem.
But Kyoya is completely glaringly absent.
The creator of the series, Takafumi Adachi, actually confirmed outside of the anime what happened. Kyoya inherited his father's massive multinational industrial company, a corporation known as C.
He spends his days wearing a suit, working in an executive office alongside his brother, Gakaru.
And this is the massive aha moment. Think about Kyoya's entire psychological profile. Go all the way back to episode 2 of the very...
His singular, all-consuming, obsessive motivation in life was to defeat King. It defined every waking moment of his...
He climbed treacherous mountains. He lived in the wild. He trained with literal packs of wolves. He stood in the path of raging tornadoes and let them tear at his body, all to gain the raw power necessary.
If we connect that deeply ingrained psychological drive to his eventual corporate status, the deductive conclusion is inescapable.
Kyoya would never, under any circumstance, any reality, retire from the sport of Beyblade to run a corporate office if he had lost or tied that final battle.
His ego, his pride, and his obsessive drive simply would not allow it. If he lost, he would be right back in the mountain, brutalizing his body to prepare for a
The only psychological reality where Kyoya puts down his Beyblade, puts on a suit, and picks up a briefcase is the reality where he finally did it. He won the final battle.
He defeated his internal rival. He claimed the absolute, undisputed title of the strongest blader in the world.
And having achieved his life's singular and possible goal, the obsession finally broke. He looked around the stadium, realized he had nothing left to prove to Ginka, to the world, or to himself, finally.
That peace allowed him to walk away and live a normal life. Kyoya won.
It is a brilliant piece of deductive reasoning that uses the character's core psychology to solve a narrative blank space. It recontextualizes that ambiguous fade to black.
It's not a cop-out by the writers. It is the quiet, definitive, unseen triumph of Kyoya's entire character arc.
That is just so deeply satisfying. We started this deep dive talking about a show that was literally engineered in a board to sell plastic tops to children.
And we ended up doing psychoanalysis on anime characters.
But look at the incredible depths of storytelling we just uncovered. Look at Kyoya. His arc forces you to think about the fundamental nature of ambition. Think about your own Ginka, your own ultimate rival, that massive project at work, your life's greatest, most obsessive goal.
What do you actually do the day after you achieve it?
Exact. When the dust settles in the Colosseum, the adrenaline fades, and you are standing at the summit, do you keep fighting an empty battle just because it's all you know? Or do you have the courage to put down the ripcord, accept your victory, and find a completely new path? Think about that.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the lore, keep asking the hard questions, and we'll see you next time.